So if you get your music mastered by me, I will deliver to you the high-res file, which is going to be the full quality at whatever I'm mastering it at, which is usually 48K or higher, 24-bit. And then I'll give you a CD formatted version of that file, which will be 4 to 4.1 kilohertz, 16-bit. And then I will also provide an MP3. And here is why I don't recommend just taking the high-res file and converting it to MP3 on your end. Here we have a master, and this is 48K, 24-bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and take this file as is and save it as an MP3. And I'm going to show you what happens when you do that. So what I'm going to do is select MP3. I'm going to use a pretty high quality MP3. I could go lower. It'll be the same results either way. So go ahead and save it. And then I'm going to close the file out, and then I'm going to open up the MP3 and bring it back in. Okay, so here's the MP3, and I'll drag it back in. And look at the waveform and see if you notice anything. So these waves are now clipping over 0. I didn't change anything. All I did was convert the file format. And I scan this, and this program is going to tell me the peak amplitude. We are now over 0 in some places. I'm not going to go into huge depth as to why this happens. What you need to know is that when you take a file on your end and you convert it with, iTunes or Apple Music or whatever, that file you're now playing wherever you play it is clipping in some areas. You might not be able to hear it, or you might actually. Sometimes those MP3s, if they're really heavily compressed and heavily limited, and it's really aggressive music, maybe there was clipping done during the mastering stage, those things are going to be distorting all over the place. You're going to actually notice that in some instances. So what I do on my end is I will actually take my master, add a little bit of headroom. So I'm going to pull this down by about 0.3 decibels. And then I'm going to save it as an MP3. Close it out, bring it back into the program. And I'm going to check where my peaks are after that trial. So I'm going to scan this. It's telling me that it is hitting 0 on the left channel, and it's hitting negative 0.04 on the right channel. And the nice thing about this program is that it'll actually tell me where the clipped samples are. So I can actually click this little thing and zoom in, and it shows me exactly where that intersample peak is. It's this guy right here. Unfortunately, I can't just take this and lower the amplitude on it because you can't really edit an MP3. It's not something that you can necessarily do, at least not in this program. This program will essentially, if you're trying to open up an MP3 in this program and then edit it, it actually just converts it back to WAV. So you can do your edits, and then you have to convert it back to MP3 all over again. So I've tried that. It doesn't work. The edits get lost in that conversion process because it's literally just doing the same thing it did the first time you converted the MP3. So this is still clipping a little bit. I'm going to add some headroom and lower this a little bit more and see where we're at. Okay, let's lower this to negative 0.5. And now I will save it, convert to the MP3. Okay, now we're looking good. This is actually not going to be a problem. I can scan, and peak amplitude is at negative 0.26 on the left, negative 0.31 on the right. So this is good to go. I don't have to change anything. Yes, when you add headroom and you have to bring the level down, you do lose some perceived loudness. But I would probably much rather have that than something distorting. So we will go ahead and close that out. You will also notice that when you do this to a WAV file and you're just maybe downsampling it from 48K to 44.1, sometimes that will also happen during that downsampling process. It's just a matter, it's kind of a result of downsampling in general. So let's try that with this and see what happens. So here we have 48K we're starting with, and I'm going to save it, change the sample rate to 44.1. I'm not going to touch the bit depth yet. So we're going to save this, and I'm going to actually title this as 24-bit 44K. That's how I designate what file format I'm looking at. Okay, save it, and then converting sample type. Now I will close it out and bring it back into the DAW. Here's my 2444. So I bring that back in. And now I'm going to do a scan, and you can see that some of the peaks are now higher than they were. The master is limited to negative 0.1 decibels. And this file is now peaking a little bit higher than that. Fortunately, I could go in here and look at every single instance where we had an intersample peak, and I can go in here and actually manually bring all these levels down. That's the most transparent way to do it, but it's probably not necessary. What I can do is simply apply another limiter at negative 0.1. You will not hear any audible difference in the dynamics of this file if you were to compare the 48K with this one, because the peaks that were a little higher than negative 0.1 are mostly intersample peaks, and you can't hear that comparing back to back, unless of course those intersample peaks are tremendously heavily clipping and you're hearing maybe a bit of distortion, but in this case they are not. So I applied hard limiting to it at negative 0.1, and now we're back to where we were. So I can go ahead and now save this file and apply dithering, because I'm going to save it as a 16-bit file. The dithering I use is triangular. I'm going to hit OK. If I save this and I apply dithering, it's not going to affect any of these peaks or the dynamics in terms of peaks. It will affect the dynamic range from a bit perspective, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm actually going to rename this 1644 because I'm designating this file as a 16-bit 44.1K file, which is good for CDs. So I'm going to save that, get rid of it, and now I can get rid of the 2444, and I have my CD quality file. I have my MP3. These are guaranteed to not clip when they are played back. And that's the work I do on my end before I deliver the files to you. So you don't have to do any of that on your end. Okay, so you've got your folders that you'll receive. Each folder will have your masters in them and the corresponding files. And usually I will label each one 24-bit, 48K, that sort of thing. So 2448, that's what that means. If this were a 96K file, it would be 2496, etc. 16-bit 44 for CD, and then the MP3. By the way, I do recommend sending the highest possible resolution to your streaming platforms, your distributor, your vinyl pressing plants, anybody who is going to use a raw file and print it to some sort of medium that is not CD. Definitely give them the highest resolution file you can. If you want me to master your music at 96 or higher, I can absolutely do that. The best thing to do is to mix your music at that sample rate to begin with, because if you send me a file that is 48 or 44, I can upsample it, and I will upsample it to 96 or higher before I master it. But the real benefits happen if you are starting at that sample rate. So you're recording all your audio in there at that sample rate. You're mixing, you're doing all that stuff at the higher sample rate. It's like a tape machine spinning at a faster speed. You have more snapshots per second of that audio, thus a higher resolution, a more accurate depiction of what that audio really sounds like, less chance of digital funny business. So just a little tip there. If you have any inquiries and you want me to maybe listen to your music first before I master it or something, I'm always happy to listen to it, give you some tips, feedback, anything that will help it translate better before I master it on my end. Always happy to do that. Send me a DM and we will talk.